And now, for our final talk of the day, and arguably the most important, Christiana Figueres dedicated part of her career to rebuilding the global climate change negotiating process based on fairness, transparency, and collaboration, leading to the Paris Climate Accord. 3 years on, we ask, is the world doing enough? Please welcome to the stage, in conversation with Fiona Harvey from The Guardian, Christiana Figueres on Planet Tech.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you for coming today, Christiana. I have with me today, as you've just heard, Christiana Figueres, who is the nearest thing that we get in the climate change world to a rock star. And let me explain why. We've known about climate change for decades now. And since 1992, the world has been coming together under the United Nations to try and find a solution, to try and make a treaty that would ensure that we don't run into dangerous runaway climate change. 1992 is a long time ago now, and in that space of time we had some successes and some low points. We had the Kyoto Protocol, but it took a while to come into effect, and it was not as effective as people hoped. In 2009, we had a conference in Copenhagen where the world very nearly got a global agreement that we wanted, but it didn't send quite the signal that people hoped. It wasn't until 2015 when Christiana was the leading UN official on climate change, and she led the way to the first comprehensive global agreement on climate change, binding developed and developing countries for the first time to cut their emissions in line with a stated goal. And the goal that was set out in the Paris Agreement was that we would have no more than 2 degrees Celsius of warming, with an aspiration to have no more than 1.5 degrees of warming above pre-industrial levels. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but what happens when you get 2 degrees of warming is that you run into dreadful problems. You get feedback loops, you get runaway climate change, you get the wet areas of the earth getting wetter, the dry getting drier, you get dreadful problems. And the difference between 2 degrees and 1.5 degrees might sound even less, but we've just found out in a brand new scientific report by all of the world's leading climate scientists, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, we've just found out what the difference is between 1.5 and 2 degrees of warming. Now, Christiana, I can call you the architect of the Paris Agreement, and the Paris Agreement was where we got the 2 degrees or 1.5 degree limit. Can you tell us what the IPCC has told us about the difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees, and why we don't want to go to 2 degrees, why we don't even want to go to 1.5 degrees of warming?
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. So as Fiona has related, the Paris Agreement that was adopted by all countries in 2015 establishes a range of temperature. At that point, we were heading for a temperature increase of anywhere between 4, 5, and 6 degrees. And the Paris Agreement was the first legally binding global agreement where all countries committed to not allow the temperature to go above 2 degrees, or rather strive for 1.5. So we have in the Paris Agreement a certain leeway there, certain flexibility in that range between 1.5 or, to be textually correct, well below 2 degrees. And that's because at that time, according to the science that we had in the year 2015, we actually thought that much of a difference was not that big a deal. Some thought. Well, since then, The Paris Agreement established a study, requested a study from all of the climate scientists, and since then, just 2 weeks ago, the climate scientists have published a report that actually looks at the difference. And here's the conclusion. Half a degree, while it may not make too much of a difference between what you wear in the morning or what you don't wear, half a degree as a global average temperature increase actually makes a world of difference. It makes a world of difference because a world that goes to 1.5 is one quality of life for humans, and a world that goes to 2 degrees is a different quality. If we go to 2 degrees, we will have destroyed 2 times as much biodiversity. We will have destroyed 2 times as much physical infrastructure and livelihoods, and we will have put 3 times as many people into life-threatening situations of either heat or food scarcity, or both. So that's 2 completely different worlds, encapsulated by half a degree. That is why it is absolutely critical that from now on, everybody changes their North Star on reducing emissions to the pathway that is going to take us to no more than 1.5 degrees.
That's a very important difference. And Christiana, it took more than 25 years, it's taken more than 25 years to get to this point of having a global agreement. Is that global agreement now in jeopardy?
No, I don't think it's in jeopardy because we do have some person who lives in the dark house, as I call it. All the lights are out in the White House. And so I call it the unfortunate dark house for the time being. But despite that, the economy in the United States is actually moving forward because they understand that decarbonizing their products and services is actually good for themselves, for their products, for their companies, for their financial institutions, for the cities, for the states. There is at least a 50 to not 60% of the economy of the United States that is actually moving forward into decarbonization. So is China, so is India, so is Mexico, so is Chile. So you have the bulk of countries that are actually moving forward, not because they want to save the planet, right? Let's not delude ourselves around that one. They're moving forward because they understand that is what is going to provide them with business continuity. That is what is going to make them competitive in a low carbon, or in fact no carbon society. But the challenge is actually pretty large, right? So I actually brought a prop so we can understand what we're talking about. So right now, we have 41 gigatons of carbon emissions that we're putting out into the air. So let's call it just 40 because it makes it easier for those of us who can't do math. And have this piece of paper be 40 gigatons a year that we're all collectively putting up into the atmosphere, okay? Now, in order to get to where we have to get, starting in 2020, which is only a year and a half from now, we have to begin to half, that means HALF, not HAVE, half the emissions over that decade. So that by 2030, we would be at 20 gigatons. Over the decade after that, we have to half again to 10 gigatons. Over the decade after that, we have to half again to 5 gigatons. And 5 gigatons is what we should naturally be able to absorb by the planet. Now, this kind of reduction is not a reduction that is possible if you pursue this linearly. The only sector that can understand this is the tech sector, because exponential is at the heart of the tech sector. Moore's law is something that you all understand. Not only do you understand, you live by it, because that is the entire DNA of the tech sector. So exponential decarbonization is actually what we need. And we're already sort of on that path. We're already on the exponential path with respect to renewable energy. We're actually duplicating the capacity of renewable energy, the installed capacity of renewable energy around the world every 4 years. So that is already on an exponential path. And if we continue that exponential path, we will be by 2030 at 50% of all the electricity produced in the world is going to be renewable. That is an exponential path. We're beginning to see an exponential path in electrification of vehicles. That will also very soon be on an exponential path. Where we're not seeing the exponential path is on everything to do with land use. We're not seeing the exponential path on everything to do with heavy industry. with built environment. That is where the brains and the capacity of the tech sector need to focus on those sectors, not because you want to save the planet, but because there's huge business opportunity there. The decarbonization of the world is going to provide 65 million new jobs over the next 5 to 10 years because of the opportunities, the new technologies that are going to be applied to decarbonizing all the sectors. So there's huge opportunity here, but it has to be done if we want to live in a world that is a stable world for future generations.
It's difficult to know whether to be optimistic or pessimistic in this, because it does sound like a mammoth task when you lay it out like that. But when you talk about renewable energy and so on, it sounds like we're on the right path. How much more do we need to do?
Well, we need to do a lot more, and there are very, very clear sectors that deserve our attention. So just on renewable, in order to continue that exponential path, we need to develop much, much better storage capacity, for example, where batteries are not up to speed of where we need them to be, so that we can store energy when the wind is not blowing and the sun is not shining, so that we can get to that high level of renewable energy. Energy efficiency is a huge sector, completely. That's like the sleeping giant. And that is all about technology, right? Because honestly, if you rely on human behavior for energy efficiency, you're going to go blue in the face. So that is an area in which technology really needs to take over and stop the completely wasteful use of energy that we have in every single country. But the same can be true in land use, and we just came from another panel on food production. We are so inefficient about the way we produce food, the way we consume food, the way we transport and distribute food. Complete inefficiency. And if there's anything that the tech sector does, is actually extricate inefficiencies from the system and optimize. And that is exactly what we need to be doing in all of the sectors that have to do with climate.
But economists tell us that...
Do you still believe economists?
Okay.
Sorry.
But, efficiency ought to come naturally to businesses, because inefficiency is a cost. So why are we so inefficient?
Well, we're very inefficient because we have this bad habit of stepping over dollars that are, lying on the street in front of us. It's human behavior that we leave. I mean, Fiona, let's be completely transparent. How many times have you and I left a room and left the light on? Okay. I mean, point in case, right? Point in case. So human behavior is like that. We are not, as humans, our little chip is not there yet to say, right, let's be as efficient as possible with energy. So we need all the technologies to make up for that human irresponsibility of being completely inefficient. And the technologies exist. We have to get them into the right hands. We have to have smart grids. We have to have motion detection everywhere that we go. We have to have homes that are smart, that do things much better than we do. And we have to ensure that that technology is accessible in developing countries as well. It can't be just a luxury item in developed countries, because it is actually the developing countries that are going to use more energy, because their GDP is growing very, very fast. So they will have the growth in population, they'll have the growth in the demand for energy, and they will have the growth in the supply for energy. So let's make sure that the energy that is supplied there is both green, clean, and efficient.
Okay. And does the responsibility for this, does it lie with governments or with businesses or with people?
How about everybody? Because last I looked, we're all on this planet, right? And all our children are going to be here.
And a lot of the things that we already need, a lot of the things we need, we already have. So we've got renewable energy, we've got low emissions technology, we've got electric vehicles and so on. Do we have all the technology we need to solve this problem?
No, I think, one of the things that I'm incredibly grateful for and that I express my gratitude every morning is to be alive right now. Because I do think that we are all witnessing the deepest transformation in the history of mankind. And it is very exciting how we're moving from a 20th century that was very, very obsolete in many different things, including energy, and we're moving into a completely different century, supported mostly by technology, digitalization, and artificial intelligence. And that is an incredibly exciting transformation. So I would say that we're in, just if you think about it as an exponential curve, we're way down at the bottom of the curve, and as soon as we put our brains to think about how can we exponentially increase that curve, we're going to be seeing changes in the building sector, in the transport sector, in the energy sector, in the food sector, that are beyond any imagination that we have right now, right? I mean, my grandchildren will say, "You did what? You put something liquid into a vehicle, and you actually owned a vehicle? How? 5 minutes ago is that?" Right? So it is very exciting because we're creating a completely new world. But there's still a lot to be done. So it's not like we have all the technologies. We have visibility into, I would say, maybe, I don't know, 5-10% of the technological capacity that we're going to be displaying over the next 20 to 30 years, and the rest is still to come. That is exciting, right? That is exciting. What that means is business opportunity means new jobs. It means much better access to energy, which is at the bottom of the poverty pyramid. So it means a much safer, more productive, safer world that has much more of a chance for peace. Very important. But we have to get at it. It's not going to happen just by wishing it so. It's going to happen because we decide intentionally that this is what we're going to do.
Great. And what about the people here today? What can people in this audience do? What would you like them to take away and go home after this conference and do?
Well, we just heard from Rick, right? A very wonderful invitation for everyone to decide what is your highest purpose in life. And I think that's the question. That is the question from my perspective, but that happens to be my passion. Climate change is the monumental challenge that every single human being is facing right now at the beginning of the century, and has to be the challenge that we answer in a timely fashion. Now, what that actually means is that every human endeavor, there is no human endeavor that you could pursue that you say, right, this is outside the ambit of climate change. That just doesn't exist. Every single human endeavor is touched by climate change in one way or the other, negatively, and there is an opportunity there. So no matter what you are at, to put on the lenses of carbon efficiency, efficiency of resources, and to understand that in order to bring the number of people that we're going to bring onto this planet within planetary boundaries, we have to become so much more efficient about everything that we do. This is about resource efficiency quadrupled, exponentially improving resource efficiency, and everybody here has a role to play.
Okay. So it's efficient. Efficiency, efficiency, efficiency is the message. And one more thing, because we were in a panel earlier talking about food. Do we all need to become vegetarian?
Yes.
Christiana, we're very lucky to have you, and the world is very lucky to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.